What's good, y'all? Anderson Emerald here, and we got to talk about Bryan Levell once again. I was insanely surprised by this result. I thought that he would win. I thought that he would do well, but Bryan Levell, 19.69 seconds in the 200 at the Hungary Continental Tour meeting that it's still going down at the Budapest Stadium in Hungary. Now, this was insane, absolutely insane. His previous best before this was 19.97, I think, from last year. And so a drastic improvement. Yes, he ran a windy 19.79 a little bit earlier. We'll talk about some of his performances in a second. But what's amazing is that he ran this into a slight headwind of negative 0.4. Now, headwinds in a 200 always can be tricky, but I think this just proves and justifies why Bryan Levell is a threat. Shout out to, you know what I mean? Like, listen, he's a threat. Now, I'm going to, again, talk about in a second his potential of competing to actually get on the podium. But as an individual performance, this really does kind of highlight the trajectory that Bryan has been on since last year and also at the top of 2025 as we now look forward to the World Championships in Tokyo in just about a month's time. Now, shout out to the other guys. Again, Bryan Levell, 19.69 seconds. Wade Van Niekerk, 20.07. Very, very impressive to me. This was a very impressive performance. I don't know what this is going to, mean in terms of his potential at the World Championships later on this year, but I'm just very impressed with Wade's performance here. But let's talk about Bryan Levell. Bryan Levell, 19.69 seconds. This makes him the third fastest Jamaican all time when talking about the 200. Shout out to World Athletics. They unfortunately haven't updated it. They'll get it updated soon, but he is now only behind Usain Bolt and Johan Blake. Bryan Levell with his 19.69 now sits number 3 all time, behind Usain Bolt, behind Johan Blake, ahead of Warren Weir, who we saw get the bronze medal at the 2012 Olympic Games behind Bolt and Blake. 2012. Also ahead of Rashid Dwyer, ahead of Akeem Bloomfield. Like, he's a Nickel Ashmead. You're Don Quart. Like, he is ahead of a couple high quality athletes that Jamaica has been able to see throughout the decades, literally decades. And now only behind Johan Blake and Usain Bolt. Now, that does give a very, very strong indication about, where he's going in his future. Like, number 19.69, number 3 all-time in Jamaican history. And when you look at the all-time performances, this is the fastest time that a Jamaican man has run in the 200 since 2015, when Usain Bolt ran 19.55 seconds. That was the last time any Jamaican athlete ran this fast in the 200 meters. That is a decade of of a time lapse that we haven't seen a performance this fast. Now, we did see, I think it was Andrew Hudson, he ran 19.87 seconds, but that was back in 2022. That was the last time we saw a really, really fast performance. But in the years since then, 2012s, 2016, 2013s, like all those times, 2008, 2009, it wasn't until 2015 or since 2015 that we have seen a Jamaican man run this fast in the 200. And again, we're talking about Bryan Levell, who has been making progress, who's been showing consistency over the past 2 years, really since he's kind of jumped onto the scene and become a relatively prominent name, coming out of champs, coming out of high school in the previous 2 to 3 years or so. He's really putting himself into the conversation. But on top of that, when we're talking about all-time performances, his 19.69 now moves him to equal number 16 all-time in the 200. Tied with Clarence Munyai, his 19.69 was run at altitude, so shout out to Clarence, and he never replicated it. But this again puts him in some rare air where he's surpassing Michael Norman, and shout out to Courtney Lindsay, who's run 19.7. Pietro Minea, who held the world record for a long time until Michael Johnson broke it. Mike Marsh, Divino Duduru, he surpassed a couple different guys, almost on the heels of Frankie Fredericks, of Wallace Spearman, right? Of Xavier Carter, Andre DeGrasse. Now he's putting himself into a realm of, some of the best athletes that we've seen in the history of the 200 meters. And his career was really only getting started. So equal number 16 all time. But then in 2025, shout out to World Athletics, they updated it here, but he is now number 3, only behind Noah Lyles and Kenny Bednarek, who we just saw go 1-2 at the USA Championships, 19.63 and 19.67. So Bryan Levell jumps right behind both of them. This is a massive statement in terms of what Bryan may be capable of when we do get to the World Championships. Now, I'm not ready to, let's talk about this for a second. So what I want to look at is how this kind of backs up the string of performances that Bryan has put together in 2025. Just very quickly, last year in 2024, as I noted previously, he had run 19.97 seconds at the Jamaican National Championships, and this was a performance that got him to qualify. He won national championships in Jamaica, and that qualified him for the Olympic Games in Paris, France. In Paris, he went on to make the semifinals, so competed in the heats, competed in the repechage rounds, and then he went to the semifinals. So he really didn't have an amazing experience in Paris, and this was his first global championships, his first time competing on a massive stage with multiple rounds, against high quality competition. So I don't fault him for his performance there. Again, first time ever. Look at Usain Bolt, 2004. I mean, he was injured that year, but just some parallel. So going into 2025, I don't think outside of Jamaica, many people had him on their radars, right? Many people looked at Andrew Hudson because he had run that 19.87 about 3 years ago at this point. Many people were looking at him as, the guy to potentially still challenge. And unfortunately, Jamaica hasn't been having a very strong, contingent of 200 meter guys since Usain Bolt retired, unfortunately. So now looking at what Bryan Levell has been able to produce in 2025, he's really put himself into the conversation of not only a strong 200 meter runner, but when looking at his performances as a whole, as a very strong medal threat. I'll say it now, but we'll talk about that in a second. Look at what he's done throughout the year. Started off, with some hundreds, all the way up to 10.05, which was a really strong performance, especially considering that was in April. His first 200 of the year, this was a straight 200, so I'm not counting it. His first 200 came at Grand Slam Track Philly, 20.63 seconds. Now, this was finishing down the pack, 5th place. That's when Kenny B, he had run 19 point something, and I don't think anyone in that field actually broke 20 seconds. But his 100 meters in Philly, this 10.02, I thought this was very telling. So 10.02, really telling. 19.79, slightly windy at the Racers Grand Prix, right? Plus 2.5 meters per second. This, I think, was a strong indication for everyone to say, hold up, okay, he has some chops. Yes, it was windy, plus 2.5, but you don't just drop a performance like that without having the real talent to be able to go, at least 19.8 something, right? If that was a, zero wind or whatever it was. So, or a plus 2.0 or whatever, right? So this was a very, very telling performance. Going into trials, he ran 9.99 seconds and 9.94 in the 100 meter rounds. Unfortunately, pulled up in the 100 meter final, but backed it up by winning the 200 at Jamaican trials, getting that overall win, 20.10 seconds. So I bring all this up to say, up to this point, he had put together a relatively strong string of performances at the top of 2025 that gave an indication that he was almost like entering a realm for Jamaican sprinting, specifically in the 200 and filling in a gap that had been left open since Usain Bolt retired. Again, yes, Andrew Hudson had been running the 19.87 and he had made the final in, I think, Budapest after the car crash, golf cart incident and everything. But there was really a big gap, and this looked like someone was starting to fill that void. Now we get to him running 9.82 seconds, out in Europe. Massive performance to move him to one of the fastest Jamaicans all time. And now we see this 19.69. I think that Bryan Levell is making a very, very strong case that he can be a contender for a medal at the World Championships this year. Now, let's be very clear. I'm not picking him for a medal right now. I want to be very, very clear about that. Noah Lyles, Kenny B, Letsile Teboho, in whatever order you want to pick, they are a very strong contingent of guys that are going to be very, very hard to take down. Very challenging to be able to take down. But Bryan Levell is putting himself in a position to be in that conversation with some other guys like an Alex Ogando is who I'm probably looking at right now, right? Alex Ogando, Dream Richards, Carly Makarawu. Shout out to Robert Gregory, Courtney Lindsay. They are also in this. I would say Courtney Lindsay probably more so in the conversation, considering he's been at Worlds before. Shout out to T Mars. He's not going to be at Worlds in the 200. So he's putting himself in that conversation with other guys who have made the final or who have run very fast times in previous years, and of course have run fast times this year as well. So I really, really do like this performance, but we do have to keep things in context when talking about this 19.69 from Bryan Levell. He has to do it after rounds at the championships, and that's going to be very important. Now, I'm not saying in any capacity that he's not able to. I'm not doubting that ability. But when you look at the past championships on the global stage, 2024, last year, we saw it took 19.70 to get the bronze medal by Noah Lyles, right? And when he was sick. 2023 took 19.81 seconds to get the bronze medal by Letsile Toboho after he had done a double. 2022, 19.80 seconds by Ariane Knighton to get the bronze medal in Eugene. 2021 at the Tokyo Olympic Games, we saw 19.74 by Noah Lyles to get the bronze medal behind Andre and Kenny. So I say all this to say because all these guys are running these performances after 3 rounds at the Global Championships against high quality competition. Bryan Levell hasn't done that yet, but because of his experience at the Olympic Games last year, because of his experience this year competing against high quality guys, whether that's at Grand Slam track in Philly, whether that's at, the Jamaican trials, whether that's at the Prefontaine Classic, in a race like this, the Hungary Continental Tour, he's building up more and more experience that will lend itself to him getting to the Tokyo World Championships and potentially challenging for a medal. Now, I think it's pretty clear that Bryan should be in the final. If he doesn't make the final, that's going to be like, whoa, what happened? But a medal, still question marks. As I said, I'm not picking Bryan for a medal right now, just considering the top 3 who are very, very solid, and we know that they're able to show up when it counts. Noah Lyles, Kenny B in excellent form right now. Yes, Letsile maybe in the past 2 meets hasn't looked as great, but he's already run 19.76. And we know that he's the Olympic gold medalist. And we know he shows up at championships having, got medals at the last 2 global champs. Like, there's no way you can actually doubt his ability. So those 3 are very, very strong. But in my opinion, you'd be a fool to say that Bryan is not capable of actually dipping his toes into those medals, breaking up that top 3 and standing on the podium, which would be the first time a Jamaican man did it since 2016 at the Olympic Games, or since 2015 at the World Championships with Usain Bolt. Again, specifically in the 200. Listen, amazing performance by Bryan Levell. Very excited to see what he's able to do in the subsequent months. I know I spoke about, or at the next month, going to Worlds. I know I said that, maybe he can make the he can go to the Diamond League final, if he gets enough points and stuff like that. It's probably out the window for him, right? I think it'd be really important for him to lock in, focus on just going for this 200 and potentially spoiling the party when it comes to those medals. So just some initial reactions. Again, this is exciting, man. I'm excited to see this performance from Bryan Levell, and I'm just excited as a pure track and field fan to see Jamaica finally back, or we'll see, back in the 200. Like, come on, there's been a drought. Shout out to Andrew Hudson, but like, come on, there's been a drought in the 200 by Jamaica literally since Usain Bolt won gold in 2016. Like, what? I think, someone correct me, but I think Andrew Hudson in 2023 is the only athlete who has actually made the final in the 200 for Jamaica. I think so. And that was, again, the golf cart incident. So he was kind of put in lane, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was wild. But now there's a legit contender. So let me know what you think about Bryan Levell, this 19.69. Crazy. Always appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching.